Wait a minute. Okay.
Okay, now it says recording.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I guess. Did you do a test, Aisha? They're not hearing you? All right, well, come on over here.
All right, good morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock on the dot on Friday, October 5th. So we are officially in fall, and today I think will feel like a fall day. So I'm excited. It's my favorite time of year. So I see Allison Brayfield has her video camera working. I want to take a minute to just welcome Aisha Hoggard. Aisha is filling the Allie Connor position as the administrative assistant to Dr. Rogers, so she's in the Dean Suite. So I just want to give a second to say hello. Welcome, Aisha. I look forward to meeting you on Monday. Want to say hi to everybody?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for welcoming me. I'm really happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you. So I hope anyone who's in the Townsend Hall area, if you got a second, why don't you go ahead and stop by and say hello. So she's a member of her family now. And another new member of her family I was going to share for folks, Gina Christ had her baby on Sunday. So his name's Chase, and everyone's doing well. So we wish all of them really well. And if baby pictures make you smile and make you happy, there's going to be a baby picture at the DW today. So if you need a little pick-me-up, go ahead and look for that baby picture because he's a cutie. I also want to just talk about the fall. It's here and it's conference season. So I know last week was the NEA FCS conference. We had a huge contingent go out to that, and they pretty much swept with tons of awards, and they gave lots of presentations. And next week I know is the National 4-H conference, so we have people going to that. And then the week after that, we'll have our conference. So the annual extension conference is coming up. For any professional staff who have not yet registered, and I think I sent direct emails to pretty much all of you, go ahead and get that registration in ASAP. We asked for the registration deadline to be yesterday, but if you're still outstanding and think you are going to be able to go, please get on there and register because we really want everyone there as long as you don't have a good excuse. So if you're not in the state, I've gotten that, and that's fine. We understand some people have travel or personal vacation scheduled. That's great. But if you're around, we really want you there. I'm going to share my screen just quickly here because I wanted to just show the agenda for the day. So we're going to be at the Modern Maturity Center in Dover. We're going back there after a year away. Registration and continental breakfast are 8:30, and we're going to kick off promptly at 9 a.m. And then we have our keynote speaker is Rebecca Kelly from the National 4-H Council, and she's going to really frame for us this whole concept of collective impact, what it is, how it works, and how it relates to extension. So that will really be a great talk to frame the whole day for us. I do want to point out the next 30-minute time block. We're going to be switching this. We're going to move this talk to the afternoon and move the innovation team updates to this 9:45 to 10:15 spot. We're going to have the 5 teams, first place through fifth place, who won the innovation contest last year, provide a 5-minute update each. So we'll hear what has happened, what was successful, what they had to retweak and innovate, and go through that process where they basically have to learn from their mistakes. So that will happen in the morning. We'll have a brief break, and then one of the reasons why we really want everyone here, aside from all of the other great professional development you'll have throughout the day, is that we're going to have about an hour and a half to talk about some of the plan of work things that we're really focusing on. So we've had the needs assessment, Now we've had edits from all of the program teams come in for how our plans should change. And really the next step is something we've never done before, and that's looking towards having those larger conditional impacts. So we've always focused on those learning outcomes and the action outcomes, like people adopting something or being more active. But now we're really looking for what are we really trying to change at those bigger societal, environmental, and economic levels. So it might be people are more prepared for jobs, or they're finding jobs. We need to really kind of frame what are those examples. How do we want to build up and look at that high level of conditional impacts. So about an hour and a half, that will take us right into lunch. We'll have our Friends of Extension join us and go through our awards. And then the Share Fair is back. So I think right now, the last I heard, there were 8 people who had gone through the registration process to sign up. I think I had heard of a couple of other people who were thinking about it and had ideas of things they wanted to put in to share at the Share Fair. And I don't think I saw all of those names on there. So this is another reminder, if you haven't gone through the registration form or reached out directly to Susan Gary, please do so as soon as possible, because they're trying to get the logistics for that set up. So it'll be like last year where everyone moves around the room and you have those brief 5-minute pitches and those speakers repeat that several times. So everyone gets to hear all of the different ideas being shared. So at that point, we're going to then move into and have that talk that we've had to move. It's going to be about equity and collective design. It's going to be, I think Adam Foley is his name, who is with the university's Office of Equity and Inclusion, and then wrap up the day from a talk from Dan Rich on community engagement and how this all fits in. So it's going to be a great day. It's got a lot of really important things for us to learn about. And I think really, again, we need you all there to provide your input into how our plans will look in the future starting in 2019. So with that, I'll stop sharing. I want to point out that we have Sarah Golden on with us today. In September at our leadership team meeting, she joined us and gave a really great presentation. Tested our knowledge in a lot of subjects related to sponsored programs. And I think we all walked away having learned something. And so I felt that was really information that is good for everybody, and we should really share it with the whole audience within Extension. So Sarah, you know, she's been a great addition to the college. She really does a lot for us in Extension, so we're so fortunate to have her. She's improved the process. And so we want her to talk today about sponsored programs and really focusing on it, trying to incorporate salary onto grants and contracts. So she loves doing teaching. She has a teaching background, so she's looking to do more trainings like this. So we're very happy to welcome her today. And Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for making time for me today. I know it's busy for everyone, but I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk with everyone. Some of you I know have already sat through this presentation, so I did switch something a little bit to keep the content a little bit more fresh for you, but we will be going through kind of like a whole 360 on sponsored programs. But again, as Jen mentioned, just focusing on that compensation piece, the salary and the fringe that you can add to a sponsored program. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So again, kind of just sponsored programs, adding salary, a 360 perspective. I use memes throughout my presentations, again, just to kind of keep it moving. The content's a little bit dry, so I try to break it up for you a little bit. All kind of just tongue in cheek, but no cost extension, of course, something that you could request on a grant or a sponsored project. The way that I framed this particular session, I did do it in person, which worked a little bit better before, but I will absolutely campus mail you a prize if you answer any of the questions correctly. So I said who, what, when, where, and why for adding salary compensation to a sponsored program. And then I have pop quizzes throughout just to kind of test your knowledge on some things regarding sponsored programs and kind of see where some other areas that we might want to address through training are. And I'll start by asking all of you, and you can use the chat box or you can just interrupt me, the definitions for grants, contracts, and cooperative agreements, which kind of make up what sponsored programs are. Does anybody have an idea of what a grant is, what a contract is, and what a cooperative agreement is?
Guys, feel free to unmute yourselves.
Yeah,
And I've got the chat open to monitor that.
okay. I can't see the chat box with the shared screen, I don't think, but. Any thoughts?
Come on, guys. Somebody's got an idea.
Just how about, we'll start with a grant. What is a grant?
So this is Maria. You know, my experience with grant is that it's typically there's a request for proposal and you're applying, and it may be a competitive process. And obviously, you know, if you get the grant, then you get the money, and then you get to do the project.
Excellent. Thanks, Maria.
And I'll add Nancy Mears. She typed in a definition. A grant is a sum of money that an organization can apply for in exchange for completing a set of deliverables.
Perfect. That's a good addition to what Maria said also. Yeah, because we do, the deliverable piece is an important component. And that's kind of what separates sponsored programs from gifts. We can talk about gifts in another section. I don't want to confuse anybody, but a gift, there's no reciprocity. How about a contract? Contract works a little bit differently from how a grant works. Any thoughts on that?
Sarah, it's Karen. I was going to say it's probably a legal binding agreement between an organization and another organization to complete work under a set of parameters.
Perfect. Yeah, so it's a little bit different from a grant in that there isn't typically an RFP or a proposal process with it. It's usually just something that's arranged between two parties, and that's perfect. And finally, a cooperative agreement. We do some of these in extension. I'm not sure how familiar people are with this. Any thoughts? All right, we're good.
I mean, like it's more like an MOU, you know, where organizations sort of work together and figure out who's doing what and write it down.
Good, yeah. And I do have the definitions actually for you. So a grant, again, just a flexible instrument. You would apply for this. There's a specific scope of work and a specific budget to which you need to adhere. A contract is money provided, again, for a specific purpose. It has to be fully executed, as Karen mentioned. It's agreed upon between two parties. And typically, the idea is conceived by the sponsor, and they might make a direct request to an organization whom they know will be able to complete that scope of work. And then the cooperative agreement is also a flexible instrument. The idea is conceived by the PI, and then the cooperative piece of that is that both parties are involved in the implementation process. So then coming back around to the compensation side and adding salary to sponsored programs. So who can be added to a sponsored program? And it would be, in our particular instance, any eligible faculty and staff who will work on the project and demonstrate a commitment to it. So that would include faculty, professional staff, administrative staff. Formerly under uniform guidance, that would not have applied, but since somebody's specific administrative scope of work could fall directly under the objectives of a particular sponsored programs, that is permitted now. Students, again, if you're adding a graduate student, we do have a tuition policy, and that's added at a ratio that's comparable to their effort on the project. and then a miscellaneous wage individual who will be performing work that directly benefits the project.
So Sarah, can I ask on the administrative staff if you have an admin who's going to be helping you with something you've said you're going to do for a grant or a contract, they're going to manage registrations, do a website, you can write a portion of their salary in because they're specifically helping you with that task.
Yes, and that was reauthored, I guess, in about 2014 under uniform guidance, that we can add administrative staff if a percentage of their time can be committed specifically for work on a sponsored program. We can write that. It's usually a fairly small percentage of their time, equivalent to what they're doing for that project. So yes. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Good. Okay, our little pop quiz. So who is the individual who's named on a proposal or award or a sponsored project who's responsible for overseeing the project and will serve as the project or program director? It looks like, is that the chat box that's got okay. I can't see it. Whoops.
So I was just talking to myself, sorry. Maria Papitas, I was saying, Maria, you're in there twice. You're in there once as Maria Papitas, and then you're also in as Papitas.
Okay.
It sounds like maybe two people are, or at least two rooms in the Kent County office are opened up with your name. So, and then Sydney Ridgie also wrote PI.
Okay. Did somebody answer it? I can't see the chat box. I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me, Sarah?
I can now, yeah.
Okay, sorry. So Maria Papitas had answered PI. I was saying that there seems to be two Maria Papitases in the participant list, so I'm not sure. They might need to clarify if who's who, if Maria is actually in there twice on two computers.
Okay. Yes, that's absolutely right. It's the PI or the principal investigator. So that is the person who's responsible for overseeing a full project. So thank you. Another meme. Again, I mentioned uniform guidance. This is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but uniform guidance is kind of where we live. We have to comply by these federal regulations pretty much universally. We have a little bit more flexibility when it's not a federal award, but generally the university will follow uniform guidance regardless, and we can be more strict than uniform guidance. We just cannot be less strict. So that's probably another whole presentation. There's a lot of great information from the research office. If you go to the research office website and go to their training archives, they have tons of information on uniform guidance, and you can kind of sort by the specific topic that you're looking for. If it's salary, compensation, something like that, you would be able to find that there. So the what of salary. So salary and fringe benefits, otherwise referred to as compensation. Faculty and staff are encouraged to include compensation on grants when it's permitted by the sponsor as a means of both budget relief to the college or where you're being paid from, and also demonstrating commitment to the project. So in the instance of a pretty large grant, we would tend to expect to see somebody adding their salary and fringe benefit at a rate, at a commitment level that aligns with the amount of work you're going to be doing. If you're not adding salary and fringe to a particular project that you're overseeing, it's kind of difficult to demonstrate to a sponsor your commitment to that project. And some sponsors might question why you're not adding salary and fringe. If it's a smaller grant and you really, the objectives of carrying that particular project out are such that you have a lot of equipment, probably not equipment, but supplies and things like that you need to purchase, or other staff whose time would be put on that grant, then that kind of makes sense. But usually we do really like to see, especially the PI's time added and their salary and fringe on a sponsored program. That makes sense for everyone? why we would kind of make that request. So there are a few, but what are some considerations for sponsored programs or the post-award side when salary and fringe are included? And I'm kind of looking for two specific things. When you are being paid from a grant, there are two things that are affected in our system that we need to track and monitor.
How about somebody other than the two Maria Pepitises?
I confess it's Karen. I was the other one.
Oh, well, you've answered before too. Okay, so I see Allison Brayfield. She's commented to just me, so I can see it, but she could type, maybe switch out who she's chatting to everyone, so everyone can see she's got it. But she says effort.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And there's one other thing. In order to be able to have an effort report generated and certify your effort, we need to change one other thing in our system.
Does anybody know? You can say it or chat it. Allison's now going for the lamb.
Yeah. Thanks, Allison. Yes. Yeah. Ma'am. So in order to have your time and effort kind of kick over to our ledger, we have to update your LAM, your labor allocation module. Favorite task of everyone, but it is how we track and monitor things. It operates kind of on the back end of PeopleSoft. I think I've mentioned this in other forums, but I'll just mention it here again. So UD at a glance is kind of like a giant shadow system for PeopleSoft. So all of the functionality is completed in PeopleSoft, whether it's on the production side for the grants, and then your funds are distributed into what you see populated in UD at a glance. And the LAM also operates in PeopleSoft, and that's what tells payroll where you're going to be paid, what percentage of your salary is going to be paid to which codes, and then the LAM talks to UD at a glance, and it pulls those same levels. So yes, effort and the LAM are two things that we need to stay on top of.
Can you tell us what does LAM stand for again? You just said it quickly.
Sure, it's the labor allocation module. Again, there's a training archive on that. It's a whole PDF that finance put together. The research office also has their training archives for LAM if you have any interest in that. Typically, that's like a department level process. But it is beneficial for anyone who's working on or managing a grant to know where people are being paid from, because it makes it easier to track. And then, Karen and I have this conversation a lot, what percentage of what person's time needs to be updated in the LAM and make sure that everyone's hitting correctly in UD at a glance.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so when would you add salary? It's when a sponsor allows an individual or an organization to include it. Compensations is, again, highly encouraged to offset our internal budget, and then to also demonstrate that commitment for your time and effort in carrying out the grant objectives. And the other side of that when is at the application time. So whatever budget and justification you submit in a proposal, if it's funded and the sponsor does not come back with any information to the contrary, UD will assume that everything is approved. And we actually have that statement on our budget justifications that we submit to sponsors, that if you accept everything that we've written out, we're going to assume that you've approved everything that's in that justification. And that's what we in sponsored programs and the research office in both the post-award and the closeout will use to align with all the costs that you incur throughout the life of a project. So does that make sense to everybody? Is everyone good with that? Okay. Can grant expenses be included outside of the grant period? So that is the start and the end dates of a grant.
Nancy was fast, she says no.
Anyone else?
Anybody have a contrary opinion? Amy says not unless you have an NCE, which I'm guessing that means no cost extension. The real Maria Pepitas says only if you get approval.
Okay. The answer is it depends. I see a couple, it looks like a couple of other people added to comments.
Yeah.
So,
Followed up with it depends.
okay, yeah, it depends. So we do have approval for, or prior approval for 90-day pre-award expenses. That again is part of uniform guidance. Traditionally, and in terms of like post-award and closeout, we would want to see all of the costs incurred within the grant period. That just makes it cleaner. It's cleaner for us from an accounting perspective, and it's cleaner for an audit and for a closeout. If you were working on a project that was supposed to have started in September, and for whatever reason, the contract got delayed and it started in October, under uniform guidance with the pre-award, 90 days in advance, if you incurred some costs for work that was done on that project, you could request approval to have those costs included. So that's probably another kind of like, I'm planning a whole cost training, the cost of costs. So everything that's included with cost allocations, accounting, allowability, and those kinds of things. So we can talk a little bit about that some more. Generally speaking, the dates of the contract or the grant or the cooperative agreement are what we want to see for cost allocations, but it depends. So thank you for your input on that. Okay, and so where? Compensation, when permitted, is included in the personnel section of the budget, and it is, generally speaking, an indirect cost generating category. So when time and effort will be committed during a contract, UD will anticipate that it will be, I'm cutting myself off. You would be using the on-campus F&A rate to recover the costs generated from that particular line. F&A, again, is kind of another training session or F&A indirect cost rate. But the where, again, is just, it would be in the personnel section of the budget. Once the budget's approved, UD would anticipate that all of those costs are approved with the approval of that particular grant agreement or sponsor program. Any questions on that? I know I'm kind of ripping through this a little bit quickly, but.
So, Sarah, this is Maria. I do have a question about, so a grant proposal goes in and you said earlier that if it's sort of, if you don't hear back from the grantor, then everything is assumed to be acceptable by the grantor in terms of project scope and budget allocation. So I guess sometimes I get confused because I've had requests to get confirmation about whether or not the proposal has been accepted or not. And so can you clarify that a little bit about like the difference between when you guys just accept it as it is versus when you need confirmation that it actually was accepted? When you said that, it kind of confused me.
Okay, yeah, so I think we're kind of talking about two slightly different things. So when a sponsor approves a project, the research office, before assigning a purpose code, will require that we have a formal document or email or something from the sponsor indicating that it was in fact approved. And so I think that's kind of what we're talking about. And so if that communication doesn't reach the research office, because we are audited and because we do have cost accounting standards that we have to follow, they do need that specific document and that confirmation that something was set up. If you're in an instance where for example, you know that something will be coming, but you're just kind of in a negotiation period, but you're fairly confident that the start date will be the start date, we can set up a pre-award and you would be able to incur costs under that purpose code because you have received approval for that particular project. The only time we wouldn't be able, like a whole like stop work kind of issue would be if we don't have that confirmation from the sponsor. The responsibility does fall back on the department. Does that answer your question, or do you still have a question on that approval process?
Yeah, I think that helps. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and it is kind of challenging because sometimes we know something's going to be awarded. There's no chance that it's not going to be awarded, but because of the policies and processes that the research has in place for very good reason, we are kind of in a holding pattern, and I understand that can be a little bit frustrating. So if you find yourself in that situation, feel free to reach out to me and we'll work on like an interim process until we know that's going to be moving forward with its own purpose code. Okay, usually what we do is we have a specific code that was set up for extension that's actually called like pending award setup. So that's the code that we use, and then I just work with department administrators and business administrators to JV everything off of that code onto the grant code within the permissible time frame. So, but yeah, any question, definitely feel free to reach out to me on that. But yeah, for that specifically, we do have workarounds for something that hasn't been set up yet. Is everyone good with that? Comfortable with that? Makes sense? Oh, so where can you find a ledger of your grant expenses and allocations? I've mentioned it a couple times.
Maria?
Looking for UD at a glance?
Yes.
Okay. UD at a glance.
Yes. So if you have view access to your purpose codes, you should absolutely be going into UD at a glance and checking your ledger for all of your purpose codes. I recommend minimally bi-weekly, typically the day after a pay hits, if you have individuals paid on sponsored programs, which again, we do encourage you to have. If you could do it like every Friday, that would be awesome. I'm trying to kind of set everyone up with and like a whole report for all of your purpose codes. And then I'm starting to do projections just so that everybody's kind of in a good place. Because sometimes it gets a little bit challenging when you have people paid on a lot of different codes, and some things might get away from you when you're working in the project directly, so you don't have as much time to visit UD at a glance. Again, I'm here to support you with that. I'm happy to support you with that. We also have Melissa Bundy, who is our financial analyst, and she can support with running any reports that you might want or queries that you want to do. So with that said, so UD at a glance is definitely a great resource. Again, it's a shadow system for PeopleSoft. The only issue with UD at a glance is that the obligations line is not necessarily going to be correct for your projections. And the reason is because the obligations line runs off of the LAM. And so the LAM is only telling UD at a glance what the end date is for each person's LAM who's paid on it. So it could be, it's just not going to be accurate. It's not going to be accurate. And so you might want to build in your own projections according to, you know, your monthly expenses and building that out for however many months you have remaining on the grant, or what you have written into your budget justification ideally. The other query that you can do is from the report side of PeopleSoft, and we can do financial reporting for you to show you any transactions, expenses, things like that. And that's what we do typically for delegated authority, because trying to track that in UD at a glance is far more difficult. So is everyone good with that? BD at a glance, financials, okay. So finally, the why, and probably like the meat of this whole conversation. University budgets were originally constructed to support teaching and academics for faculty. So that research piece is sort of in addition to that. And our base budget supports lots of research and scholarly activities. And the extramural funding allows us to do a lot of other really fantastic things and to remain competitive and to maintain our reputation as a leader in several areas. You guys do awesome work. So when salary is added to grants, it offers some relief to the college budget and then affords us to do other things and offer more opportunities to you and more robust initiatives within the college through like operating and things like that. So adding compensation to a sponsored program also demonstrates, again, to a funder that you are absolutely committed to the project and you're committed to, you know, in terms of your effort and you want to be paid from it directly and you're saying, I'm dedicating this portion of my time to this project specifically and I will be working on this in addition to my college responsibilities. So yeah, kind of just the take home is that it supports the college with being able to support itself just because of the way that our budget is constructed. But then it also offers new opportunities for us to remain competitive and to be a research intensive and project intensive university and department really. I saw some chats pop up. Anything that anyone needs clarification on there?
I think those were all from the last question, from what I'm seeing.
Okay. So does that make sense for everyone? Is everyone comfortable with that?
No, I think, you know, this is really important and one of the things that I wanted to just kind of emphasize, and now's a good time to do it. But, you know, we know our base funds that come in from the federal and state really have not been increasing. We've been fortunate that they've stayed relatively stable, but our expenses have gone up. We all, you know, really, it's fortunate that we're in a place where we can get annual raises, and that has happened. And, you know, we want to be able to, you know, reward people with promotions when they have gotten to the next level. And, you know, we've seen our benefits, the costs of benefits go up, and that's not something that any of us as individuals can control, but it's something that's happening to everybody everywhere. And so those are all things that, you know, take from those base funds. So trying to write in any amount of salary onto grants is something that's very helpful and causes us to be able to then have some relief to those other budgets so we could use them for operating it and other initiatives. So it really helps spread the wealth by having everyone contribute and being involved. So I think Sarah's done a really great job of explaining, you know, why it's important and that it really is encouraged and supported.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. Yes. Okay, so finally, what do the F and A in F&A stand for, and how do they translate to budgeting?
Amy's got facilities and administration.
Awesome, yep. And the second piece of that, how that translates to budgeting.
Anybody have any ideas? Can't tell if you're all typing at once.
Trying to do this too long. It's Amy. So it helps support like the electric bills and all the bills that it costs to operate the facilities and all the administrative staff, like the ladies we have in the office, like Sarah and the folks who work on grants and contracts.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Amy. So yeah, so the facility side is kind of like what keeps the lights on, the laptop that you're using, the lab space that you're using, and those sorts of things. And then the administrative piece, indirectly, is yeah, supporting people like me, the research office, and some other costs that are included, environmental health. that are necessary to keeping the flow of research and scholarly activities moving. And a good way to think about F&A is really a return on the investment in your project back to the university. So it's a cost recovery mechanism, and it really does keep everything moving along. And just, I'll probably be doing another presentation on F&A specifically and talking in more depth on this in the future. But whenever an individual or a group of individuals or whoever is submitting grants, if you reduce or waive your F&A, that can have a long-term effect on the entire university rate. So we've kept the same rate in agriculture for quite some time. We have our negotiated rate. The standard rate up campus tends to increase. So we can talk a little bit about that. And I realize that sometimes it's an unavoidable circumstance, or it's capped by a sponsor. So that's a little bit different. But just know that, you know, we're all supporting you, and so that's kind of just the return on our supporting you in your research efforts, and then that recovery comes back to all of the work that was put in to support you. Is everyone good with that?
Sarah, it's Amy. I have a question. When we get the new Warlow, are they going to renegotiate the college's rate?
I don't know. That hasn't been specifically communicated to us, but that's a really good question, and I can make that request. I don't know if that's something that they want to broadcast yet, but I can absolutely ask and see what they're thinking on that. So I will write that down. Any other questions? I think that does it for me. I really appreciate everyone's time and input. Again, never hesitate to contact me. I'm in Newark Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm downstate Tuesday and Thursday. You can always reach me via email. It comes right to my phone. I always see it. You can absolutely call me, or call the dean's office. Debbie will let you know where I am that day. But I welcome any question. I'm happy to help you. I'm more than happy to help you and provide any individualized training that you think might be kind of just specific to you, that you want me to come and sit with you. I'm totally happy to do that. So just let me know. Anybody have any other questions?
So Sarah, I do see Maria has asked, when a reduced F&A is brought, I think maybe in, does a portion come back to extension?
Yes. So the way that it's broken out, so we have, let's just use the 41%. That's our standard research rate for on campus. We break it out on a project table in PeopleSoft. If you are solely in extension, 28% of that comes back to extension and 68% goes to the college. Then the other percentages go to the research office and environmental health and unemployment, which is a requirement. If you are in a department and also an extension, so like if you're in plant and soil and an extension, then we split that 28% 50-50. So 14 goes to the department and 14 comes back to extension. So, and we actually have a specific F&A cost recovery purpose code that sends those funds back into that particular account, and that's how that cost recovery works. So yes.
That's good to know. I think a lot of times we think, oh, if this goes in there and it's taking off the top from what we could be getting, but
Yeah.
it's nice to hear that it does come back to extension and
Yes, it comes right
some
to the
portion of it.
And it works that way throughout the entire campus. So every college unit on campus has their own kind of rate, and that's where those funds come back.
But you're getting a lot of accolades in the chat box. I think everyone found this very helpful and informative. And I have a quick question. So you've mentioned a couple of different training opportunities, more advanced or in depth on a couple of topics. I was wondering for the folks that are still on, if they wanted to unmute or type into the chat box topics that they're really specifically interested in.
Yeah.
Are there things that people really want to hear about maybe sooner than later?
Mhm.
Now there's the pause to figure out what, if anything comes in or is revealed from that.
And as people are kind of thinking through that, one will definitely be on costs and cost allocations. That's probably more like business and department administrators and doing JVs and things like that. The other one will definitely be F&A and how that all works and how we get the rate that we get and why it's important to include it, again, in a little bit more depth. I could do one on effort, but I really feel like the research office addresses that much better than I ever could. You're actually required to take their training if you go to that video and do the training, but they will offer that through the research administration day that they present, typically between May and July. They do that conference annually.
Okay, well, that's good. So I think, the F&A one, if you think that would be appropriate to do it on another first Friday, when it's ready to go, just let me know. We can just schedule it in. And then I think too, you probably, if you're down in Sussex, I have a feeling that you'd be willing to come to Kent for, maybe an in-person, catch up with us, and I'm sure the Newcastle office as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. So we'll let you know. Yeah, Nancy just says any grant training that you could bring to Sussex would be appreciated. So
Yeah.
that's a good question too, just about help with trying to identify and write grants. What kind of support is offered through the university?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. I can support you in so far as my knowledge extends, and I do have about 10 years of experience prior to coming to UD in the nonprofit, writing everything. However, Lee Botner in the research office, she works in the research and development division of the research office. She's available for you specifically for that purpose. They will help you find opportunities, and they have tons of resources on how to write competitive grants and things like that. So I can work with Lee and maybe set up a time for her to either Zoom with us or visit with us and do a tailored training.
That's really great to know, because I don't know if I get emails from Lee for purposes because I'm part of the leadership team, or if everybody gets them, but I get pretty regular emails of different opportunities. Now, granted, I get a ton of emails and I don't always look really detailed at everything that she sends.
Yeah.
So to hear that there's maybe an opportunity to sit down with her and she could provide some specific guidance is really helpful, and I didn't know that was available.
Yeah, it is. I actually just reached out to her a little while ago, and she provided fantastic books specifically for writing AFRI grants, which I hadn't thought of, but I have a new PI who's going to be a first-time lead PI on an AFRI grant, and it was great. And so I asked her, do you have this resource for other sponsors and other just resources to help people frame an idea and really cut their teeth in the whole process. And so she was going to look into that. I'll have to follow up with her because I think that, again, would provide information that exceeds what I'm able to tell you, or maybe even what she's able to tell you, and be really specific to a sponsor.
Great, yeah, thank you. So, right, they got it in the chat box. Lee Botner is her name, and so that's a great resource. I guess.
Hey, can I ask real quick? It's Amy.
Yeah, go for it.
So, I've seen you get emails from Lee Botner, but I don't know that they're. I think they're just the limited submissions one. So could maybe Sarah, you let us know? Oh wait, I see one for funding ops too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she has one that's specific to more extension or outreach related to projects or calls. If she doesn't, well, if she does, could you let us know how to subscribe to that list? And if she doesn't, maybe that's something we could talk with the research office about getting, that they're pushing more of these NGO and non-traditional grant programs to us.
She should be. I'm not certain currently. When I was in the research office, I'm fairly certain she had listservs for like NSF, NIH, and all those things that weren't part of the limited submissions. So I will ask her what her listservs are currently for anything USDA or anything extension related. And if she doesn't have one, could she create one and do a little bit more of that legwork for us on finding those opportunities? Because like I only get things that are from like Easy Fed grants and like occasionally a NIFA update, but those are things that generally we already know about. So I will absolutely ask her how she's able to support us with that.
Yeah, that'd be great because everything I get from her seems to be not relevant to what we would do in cooperative extension at all.
Okay. Yeah, I will ask her about that.
That's a great idea, Amy. Thank you, Sarah, for following up with her on that too. So, just to wrap up, thank you for all of your time today. As we've said, this is something we really encourage. We know that not every sponsored program opportunity allows salary to be written in. So we know we're not trying to force you to do something that's not possible, but in a lot of cases it is possible. And we know a lot of you, not a lot, but we have a number of staff who are fully funded on grants. And so just for the folks who are not, just know that, if there's an opportunity for you to collaborate with the faculty and provide that extension to some of the research that they're doing, it would be really helpful and a great way to connect with the department and other sections within the college. And within the DW this week, I provide, an example of what I've done with just a recent grant opportunity. So it just sometimes is a simple ask if you can include some of your salary on a project that you're going to be participating with doing some extension work. So we really appreciate everyone's efforts, and I thank everyone for being here today. I hope you have a great fall weekend. I'll be hoping to go down to Coast Day on Sunday, and we'll be 81 degrees out. So waiting for fall to really stick around. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Sarah.